Thank you so much, Finn, for the lovely introduction. And how you doing, Eilon? Manishma?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for hosting me.
No problem. It's our privilege. So I just told you that every time we talked, your company's valuation just doubles. What's up with that?
We're obviously doing our best to grow. We have a product that provides tons of value to revenue organizations, and in this era, obviously, people try to kind of grow in revenue and kind of do the best around that. And seems like the product is kind of helping in that. So yes, growing very fast.
Absolutely. Let's start with my favorite question of all. I always start with that. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey ever since childhood, all your background, and then what brought you so far.
Well, childhood has been a while back, so I do have gray hair. You might not see it over Zoom, but I do have gray hair. I think what probably I've kind of had my own little small businesses, maybe even a teenager, and then kind of worked in regular companies. The interesting piece was back in the beginning of the century. I kind of started a different company. It was interesting because me and one of my partners were trying to raise money for a certain idea. VCs told us, "Hey, the idea is crap. We like you guys. Why don't we invest a little bit of money and find a different idea?" Which was like crazy. I mean, we thought it was crazy. I think it was crazy. Anyway, we it was a company, SaaS company called Web Collage, and then sold it back in 2013. I think took a sabbatical. Highly recommended to everybody in the crowd here today. And then 2015 started Gong and kind of been sort of growing very, very fast since.
Tell us about Gong. I mean, Finn explained it kind of technically, but tell us a little bit, down to earth kind of a thing. What is Gong?
Yeah, sure. So before Gong came in, the way revenue organizations operated is mostly using what I call secondhand information. Meaning, if you as a leader, you want to know something, you're going to ask the salesperson. That salesperson is going to tell you, "Hey, I think this is happening. I think that is happening." Or best case scenario, they might type some of it into a CRM. You look in and you sort of see what the salesperson thought they're going to type in based on what they thought they heard from the client, et cetera, et cetera. And that creates huge inefficiencies. You want to understand what works, what doesn't. You're basically relying on hearsay. So what Gong does, we sort of turn the tables around and said, let's capture all of the interactions that the revenue people, sales people, pre-sales, post-sales, sales engineers, customer success, all of the different names around revenue with their customers, anywhere from recording video conferences, capturing emails, every type of interaction, apply a pretty advanced AI layer on top of it. So transcribing conversation, understanding kind of what are the topics, what are the questions, what are the rejection emails, and so on, and eventually giving people visibility. So the visibility and then guidance. So it's like, what deals should you pay attention to? What skills should you kind of learn to kind of become a better salesperson? What is the market saying? All of these things suddenly are based on reality, and oftentimes the reality gives you a different answer than kind of hearsay. And of course, it's much more accurate because the machine can process like millions and millions of communication pieces versus a human being. We can't read them all.
Right. And among the stuff that I do, I'm a junior researcher starting my PhD soon. And my PhD is all about digital transformation. And the way I see it and the way you research see it is that there's a close connection between the power and the potential of AI, combining it with sales and marketing. I mean, you are obviously proving that, but where is it going? Where is this combination taking us further?
Yeah, so I think in our world, we kind of have a model which talks about first providing people with visibility, then with guidance. I think of a GPS system where it tells you where to go, and eventually some sort of automation, kind of autonomous cars, right? Eventually they're going to drive. They don't do this yet. It's always 5 years ahead. It's still 5 years ahead and still 5 years ahead. And I think that's in many cases, in many disciplines or professions, AI is going to be the same thing. You start with just like providing a little bit of information, then guidance. I think in the sales world, it could be, write this email, pay attention to this deal, shut up because you're talking too much, whatever the thing might be, and eventually automating some of those things. I don't think we're going to see for most professions things that are automation using AI in the foreseeable decade or two for at least knowledge workers. But most of those professions can be reimagined when there is a little assistant sitting next to you and telling you, kind of reading all of your emails, understanding what you do and giving you advice and reminds you stuff and does some things for you. So I think this is where it's heading in the next decade or so.
So it's like sales 5.0, basically.
Yes. And I think none of us can remember. I think, I don't know how many people are in the crowd, they can remember the days when they drove without a GPS. I cannot do this anymore. Like I drive to the next block, I turn on my GPS. We got used to it. And I think many professionals are going to be like, yeah, I'm not going to, or like try to remember who I need to get back to over email, or what do I need to do if the system can guide me through this. So we're not there yet in the same way that we are with driving, but I think we're pretty close.
Right. Now let's talk about, a little bit about that, about insights, right? I mean, you guys are flashing the LinkedIn with great insights. It's always funny to read and astonishing sometimes. But if I'm talking about funny and astonishing, let's start with the funny. Let's start with the crazy thing. You told me yesterday that actually using bad language in sales call can be a good thing. Now I said, how come?
Yeah, that was one of our kind of more interesting or even surprising findings. And to be honest, when we published it, the amount of like rage that was on LinkedIn was kind of astonishing as well. What we oftentimes do is we have certain like design partners where we analyze their data and see what kind of drives performance, right? So if you are a Gong customer, you see some of it within the tool, not all of it. And then sometimes there's things that we can kind of anonymize and publish with people's permission, of course. So they've kind of conducted a study around using bad language. So of course, like as a sales professional or as a professional in general, you're being taught not to use bad language, right? You're not going to start cursing in the middle of a conversation, let alone a sales conversation. But what we found out is that this is still true, right? You don't want to start doing that. But if you're working with a prospect or a customer, and that kind of uses a little bit of bad language, so they kind of familiarize and they feel like you kind of created some sort of a bonding or rapport or whatnot. Responding in the same way, essentially mirroring or kind of using the same type of language, actually increases, call it conversion or kind of whatever progress or success of those conversations. So the overall finding is, do not initiate bad language, but if the prospect starts doing this, you should and feel comfortable with like continuing using the same language. You don't have to be this like sort of teacher kind of sitting in the background and like just kind of using 100% formal language.
So take us a little bit on the process. Let's talk about COVID-19 before we come back to the insights. So COVID-19 kind of changed the process or the way we do sales internationally and globally, right? What do you see drove that change in the first place? What was it only COVID? And also, is this change going to stay even after the pandemic?
Yeah. So my belief in general is COVID did not change much. It only accelerated things. So many things that would have happened anyway, maybe over a decade, just happened over a year. And this is crazy because we've always been innovating as a society or as a world, but it suddenly it's like this one year forced us to do so much. Like the fact that all of us are like, I don't know, doing Pilates courses over Zoom is kind of crazy, right? So I think sales is one of them. There has been a transition in the last, perhaps even 2 decades, certainly the last decade, and moving from in-person sales to virtual selling or digital selling, which means instead of taking a plane to a different location, taking a hotel, waking up in the morning, driving to a customer site, having a 1-hour meeting, driving back and flying back, it took me 2 days to have a 1-hour meeting. There was a transformation to virtual selling, meaning I hop on a Zoom or WebEx or whatever and have the conversation. It's not as intimate. You want to have some FaceTime, but probably a certain percentage of those conversations you can be more effective doing over Zoom or some other video conferencing technology. I think what we're seeing is, and that transformation has been happening. It was 0% 2 decades ago, and maybe before COVID it was, I don't know, 30, 40, 20, 50%. I think with COVID, everybody moved to virtual selling. So now suddenly customers are used to it. Sellers are used to it. We all know how to change our backgrounds and I don't know, hide when, whatever, like throw our kids away from our home office and whatnot. So now it's kind of much more intuitive. And what the other thing that changed, and I think is going to stay after COVID, people are all going to be even more remote themselves. So even if you go visit a customer site, it's very unlikely that you're going to meet all of the people on the customer side. So there's still going to be this video conferencing environment where some people are going to be looped in. So I think from like, how do you think about selling? I think digital sales is here to stay, kind of in 80% or 90% of the deals, not every single interaction. And that brings about totally, by the way, new skill sets for people, but also new opportunities in terms of just the data is not now becoming available. And if the data is available, now you want to utilize it, because if you don't, somebody, your competitors will. So in that respect, we probably progressed a decade in 1 year or a year and a half.
So let's keep going with that. I mean, has the process changed? Like you told me that you got great insights about when should I talk to my customers about the price during the conversation. So has it changed? And by the way, when should I ask him, okay, I'm going to tell him, sorry, okay, it's going to cost you that.
Yeah, it's a great. I don't think the fundamentals of sales change. For example, pricing is not something you want to bring in before you sell the value, right? So first of all, you want to make sure that the customers bought into the value, and after they've bought into the value, you can say, well, it's going to cost you $1 million, but it doesn't sound so expensive because you understood that the value is big. But if you start by kind of giving people sticker shock, they're not going to progress with the deal. The fundamentals have not changed. A lot of the techniques change. So for example, I'll give you an example. People who move from field sales to virtual selling need to adapt their presentation skills or style, right? When you sit in a conference room and you present, you can talk for 5-10 minutes and you can read the crowd because you kind of look around the room and you see the people and they're engaged. And if they're not engaged, you're going to stop and ask them questions. In a Zoom environment, you just do not see the people. So if you monologuing and, Gong measures like your monologue and you see field sales who are kind of moving to Zoom are monologuing more than kind of people who have been trained on inside selling, because now you have to learn that you have to stop, you have to ask, almost like coerce the crowd to ask you a question, because otherwise they're going to be, I don't know, best case scenario, they're going to be checking their phone. Worst case scenario, they're going to take a break, go to the restroom, come back, and you're not going to know it because you're not seeing them.
So now let's talk about something that you told me. By the way, you told me that a few months ago, and this was kind of game changing for me. You said that when you look at the gender wise, right? You said that women are better salespersons than the males. Now, looking at all those shows on Hollywood with Med and stuff, that actually really changing a lot of perspective. Now, first of all, is it really true? And secondly, why are female salespersons better than the males?
Yeah, it was also an interesting. It's kind of was a fun fact, and not all salespeople are the same profession. So Gong customers are oftentimes business to business customers, people, companies that sell to businesses, right? So the skill set in business to business selling might be a little bit different than business to consumer selling. We also have customers in that area, but and then it might be different in a store, like in a physical store. Right. So when we look at data, we typically look at a few of our design partners, and in business to business selling, turns out that a lot of the selling technique is about, well, not technique, but kind of selling motion in general, is understanding what the customer is looking for, understanding their pain, and then mapping your solution to their pain. So if somebody wants to have, a dashboards to a CEO wants to have certain dashboards, you want to understand why they want those dashboards and how can your solution give the CEO the right information. To do this, you need to have an open, lengthy conversation with a customer. Turns out that one of the ways to measure this is simply by a talk ratio, right? How much do you talk versus the customer? So good salespeople, there's a saying that says there's a reason why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You want to listen more than you talk. And turns out that women are just like better listeners in general and better active listeners in general. Again, not every woman and not every man, but in general, they listen more, they ask more probing questions, they can create a better dialogue. You see it in the data, and then you also see that it correlates with success. It's not 100%. You can ask tons of questions and be a horrible salesperson. And in some cases, you can ask fewer questions and be a better salesperson. But overall, on average,
but for those HRs who are looking at resumes right now, that's probably a good thing to know.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating what you can find
women,
in data.
Take women, guys.
Absolutely. In general, it's a good thing. Much better gender.
Yeah, can't agree more. So let's talk about more insights that you didn't share with me yet. What more tips can you give to the organizations as a whole and to the salesperson in particular?
Yeah. So first of all, if you are into sales, I would recommend just go to Gong. Just search our sales blog. It's free. You subscribe, you get all of the insights. I think we have it like weekly or bi-weekly. There's tons of things. What you should write in.
These are amazing. I love those.
Yeah. So there's things about how to write a good email, how to conduct a good conversation. For example, one of the things we found recently is people. I want to say we probably could have guessed it, but not everybody guesses this. For example, ROI does not set, right? Many business-to-business organizations are going to be like, hey, we want to show you a clear ROI of, if our solution you're going to spend $100,000 on, it's going to give you back $500,000 or whatever. Turns out, and it's not very surprising if you think of it, people don't buy because of ROI, and you see that, you see the data, like when are people bringing up ROI? If they do, eventually, if the reason why they buy is emotionally, they can understand, or conceptually, they understand that the solution like Gong or any other solution kind of makes sense in their environment. They can map it to how it works, how it can fit. And eventually, maybe to justify business decisions, they're going to be like, okay, so I'm going to spend $100,000. It's going to give me back money. But if you sort of start with that, say, hey, by the way, here's a random solution. You're going to spend $1, you're going to get back $5. People are not going to be convinced around the how and the why, and is this really good or bad? So people spend a lot of time on ROI. They do need the ROI to justify purchase for purchasing agents, but they shouldn't be leading with it. So there's tons of those nuggets. These are all like fun things to look. Sometimes not very intuitive. Sometimes they are, and it's good to read.
Talking about Gong, what new things you guys are planning? What should we expect, especially the guys from Grind with their bevy great customers? Give them a discount.
Yes. So I think the framework I mentioned before is once you understand that you can reimagine what revenue organizations look like and in the presence of first-hand data, you can think about like what processes or behaviors can you kind of rethink about. So we start with visibility. Here's a single phone conversation, just listen to it. Here's a whole deal. You can kind of browse it very quickly. Added on a little bit of guidance. Focus on this deal. Here's an alert and whatnot. I think our kind of thought process right now is how do we bring this guidance right to the fingertips of a salesperson. So I'll give you an example of something we've just like started beta testing. Is reminding people to follow up on calls. So assuming you're a salesperson, you have a call from, I don't know what it is, 11 a.m. to noon, right? And then you have another meeting at noon. Then you go to lunch, and then you come back and you have another meeting. By the time your day is over, you probably forgot the first meeting. The system does something very simple, and this is just the start, of course. It reminds you to follow up on time. And if you don't, it's going to keep reminding you just to follow up on this conversation you had. And the idea is that somewhere between 20 and 30% of the calls, people just forget to follow up on time. They might follow up 2-3 days later. And it's kind of lost opportunity because by that time, the customer may have kind of forgotten about you. They may have gone doing something else, or they just might feel that you don't care about them. So helping the individual salespeople complete their tasks, managing their life, giving them advice on what to do, follow up, respond to an email, nudge this person. Oh, this person just came back from PTO, just to resend this email, introduce your manager, many other things completely change your life in the same way the GPS does, right? The GPS doesn't necessarily bring you faster to target. You kind of know in many places where to go, but it sort of reduces the anxiety level. You know that if you turn right, you're going to get to the right place, and it's not going to be longer than other directions. In the same way, like it keeps all of the things for you, tells you what to do, when to do them, and helps you actually do them. So we think it's going to also be a game changer in terms of individual contributors' day-to-day behavior.
And how does it fit with all of your creations, your new creations? How does it fit with the fact that we are more virtual nowadays? And like you said, we won't drive to a meeting. We just tell them, you know what, just hop on Zoom or whatever. Just call us. Did you adapt? Did you did something which was exactly to pinpoint this change?
Yeah, a lot of this is around collaboration. So the change that has happened with COVID is people are remote from each other, first of all. And it's kind of hard, right? Especially if you're a junior person starting your career, you sit in your office, it might be your home office these days. And even if you come back, it might not be where your manager is. And you have stuff like, so as a manager, how do I know what this person is doing as like an individual contributor? How do I loop in my manager? Do I need to sort of Slack them? Do I need to sort of bring them onto a Zoom call just to sort of have a 5-minute conversation? So we're creating a lot of like those automated collaboration facilities, whether it's tools, or I'll give you an example, right? So we created this shared calendar concept where as a team, we can kind of see our calendars in the same space, and not just see like what meetings we have, actually see some data about the accounts I'm working on. So let's think about a manager. I come in the morning. I know all of, Tal is in my team. I know all of Tal's meeting. He's meeting with Cisco at 2 p.m., meeting with American Express at 4 p.m. And suddenly I can coach them towards that. And it was easier when we were sitting in an office. We call it like a swivel chair, right? You turn around and be like, hey, Tal, what are you working on today? But you're remote. You're not going to call harass Tal just for, what do you do today? And that kind of bringing together the people virtually is in my mind, a huge change in post-COVID.
Can't agree more. So last question before we give the audience a chance to pick your brains. We started with Sales 5.0 and we're going to end with Sales 5.0. Like, tell me, like in 10 years from now, okay, I'm a salesperson, I get into my office, how is it going to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. But first of all, looking ahead 10 years is not easy. I mean, it's like everything that we're going to say today is going to change because, technology changes and hope we don't have another COVID here, but, other things beyond our control are going to change. I think sales profession as well as other professions are going to change in a similar way, in a sense that many of the mundane tasks are just going to go away because the computers are going to do them. So you come in the morning, the system, there's going to be some page that tells you, hey, these are the 3 things you need to do today to focus on. Should I kind of put them in your calendar and whatnot? And then some of the mundane tasks that normally you'd spend like hours doing today, it's going to be like, click the button, respond to this, schedule a meeting for me. And the machine is going to do more and more of the mundane tasks for you as a salesperson. It's going to give you more time to do the sort of the professional tasks. So I think maybe as a lawyer, it's going to automatically mark up some contracts and going to put your attention, like, hey, focus on this and this paragraph. You don't have to read all of it. As a sales professional, it's going to be like, focus on this account, don't focus on that account. This one requires a response. Here's the recommended next action for that account. And you're still going to have the conversation. You're still going to have the relationship. You're still going to compose interesting emails to provide a value, but you're not going to waste time on, scheduling a meeting in a week from now, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific, and, spending minutes and minutes and just like setting up the logistics of the call.